our own preview.
I have this like what a hyper specific like toy that I love that they
Wait a
made.
minute, that's not. Yeah, wait. I have a Gozer action figure, so I just wear this the entire time.
Nice.
Is it weird that I had a crush on Gozer when I was like 9?
No, it's not.
Yeah, that's
It's not
creepy.
weird.
I like it.
I choose to think it's not weird.
Like Annie Lennox, I always
Dang,
thought when I was a little kid played Gozer. Oh, nice.
right?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Good.
I'm gonna just let you guys know that we're live now, so everybody
showing us
being action
Here are my
figures.
action figures.
Hello, everybody watching at home. Thank you so much for joining us. Dark Horse Comics here with a whole lot of special guests. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here on the panel today, too. This is a big new release week for us. So we have a lot of different books to talk about today, and I am very excited to introduce all these folks one by one. First, everything that's out this week is a graphic novel collection. So these are collections of single issues that have already come out, and now you can get them all together in one paperback. And so we're going to go through each of these books in a moment. Just a quick update, single issues have been delayed due to COVID-19 closures, but look for updated release dates on these. They'll be relisted in all the catalogs and previews and things like that coming up. So keep an eye out in the upcoming months. A lot of things will start coming back this fall. So stay tuned for some more updates on that front. As our regular viewers know, and welcome to any of our newer viewers too, Dark Horse has been streaming live here on Twitch from home. It's my lovely home setup here. Everybody's kind of in their own home setup. So thank you for joining us from your home and for bearing with us as we continue to navigate the work from home situation here. But we're happy to be able to bring you these panels and things like that when we are all staying home and not really having in-person conventions. So thanks again to everybody for joining us so we can do this. One more quick housekeeping note before we get into introductions. Everybody who's participating in the chat today is welcome to join us for a giveaway. You will be entering to win a whole set of all the books that we are talking about today. The way to enter is once and only once. Use the hashtag or #, and the keyword is new comics. So hashtag new comics, NEWCOMICS. And once and only once, and we'll draw a winner near the end of the stream today. So I think that's about it for housekeeping rather. I want to introduce you to all these amazing people that I have with me here today. Let's maybe start with Carlos. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, I am Carlos Giffoni. I'm originally Venezuelan, but I've been living in the US half my life. I live in LA, and I am the writer for this book called Strayed. Am I supposed to talk about the book now, or are we holding that back?
I would love it if each of you could, just let folks know which book you have coming out this week, and then we'll dive into it a little bit more momentarily.
Okay, sweet. This is it, Strayed.
Strayed. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm not just saying that. How about Chris next?
Hey, I'm Chris Cantwell. I am the writer of the latest incarnation of The Mask, called I Pledge Allegiance to the Mask, a character created by the founder of Dark Horse, Mike Richardson. I've also got a Burger Books title out that's come out in the last 2 weeks or so called Everything. It's volume 1 of that book. And we'll talk about them in a short few.
We will dive in. And we have 2 folks who have worked on the same book. So how about let's go to David next.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm Dave Dastmalchian, and I created the series Count Crowley, Reluctant Midnight Monster Hunter. The trade is out now.
And Lukas, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Lukas Ketner. I'm the artist on Count Crowley.
Thank you, Lukas, for joining us too. We have an awesome crew of writers here, so Lukas is our artist rep today. And last but absolutely not least, Annie, would you please introduce yourself and your book?
I'm Ann Nocenti, and I'm writing 2 books for Karen Berger at Berger Books. And the one out this week is Ruby Falls, with an amazing artist, Flavia Biondi, who is doing her American debut. And my other book that I'm going to plug is The Seed, David Aha.
Yes. Nice. And he's working away on that, isn't he?
We're done. We're
Oh,
done.
excellent.
Yeah, because of the current situation in the universe, we have been pushed to December 2020. So
there it is. It is coming up.
Let's do another interview at Christmas. It's going to be
yeah. We will absolutely. I know that's been a really popular title for good reason. So we'll definitely keep folks updated on that as we can. Well, thank you all for joining us once again. And I'm excited to get into more detail on all of your books. So as I said, all of these are available in trade collections this week, which means they're available widely at comic shops and bookstores, anywhere you would normally buy books, whether online or in person. We want to make sure to give a special shout out to all the comic shops and bookstores that are open and finding ways to still get you comics during these strange times. So comicshoplocator.com can help you find any locations in your area. That works outside of North America too, actually. And then also indiebound.org can help you find bookstores near you. And I want to open this up to everybody and see if you have any recommendations for shops in your area that you know are doing online ordering, pickup, etc. right now.
I'll go first. I'm in Los Angeles, guys, and please, if you can, reach out to Golden Apple. It's an amazing resource for your comics, and so many great shops in our city, but also love to my Kansas City Clint's comic shop too. I just saw some posts, and I think some folks are watching us.
Hey.
I'll go next. So Idaho in Santa Monica, also Los Angeles. It's a great store. They got looted recently. They mostly took all the magic cards, as far as I know, and they still have comic books there. So I went. They're open, limited hours, but please give them a visit and yeah, buy some books from them.
So I'm in New York City, and my favorite place to go is Forbidden Planet on Broadway. And I usually just go in and say to whoever's working there that day, what are you reading? What's good? And then I buy whatever they recommend. Plus whatever has it. Now I'm going to buy all of these comics too.
I live in LA County, but I'm out in the Inland Empire, which is, I guess, famous for a movie that David Lynch made mostly. But there's a great shop out here in Rancho Cucamonga called Four Color Fantasies. It's been there for a long time. The owner, Chris, has been incredible. It's reopened. All of the safety measures are in place. You can do your weekly pickups. They also, you can pre-order and set up your prescriptions through Comic Hub. And Chris is really on top of it. So everything's set aside for you. So if you just want to walk in, grab them, pay, he's got it all ready for you.
I'm out in Portland, Oregon. And there's just, I mean, there's way too many good shops to name, but the one that I really like to go to is Bridge City Comics. And they're one of the many stores just currently doing curbside pickup. So you can contact them, they'll let you know what they have and put in your order, and then just go and grab it.
Excellent. Well, those are all fantastic recommendations. And even if you're not in any of those areas, like I said, check comicshoplocator.com. That can help you find anybody that is near you. And then, good point is to give them a call. Not all have a website, so just check in and see what their hours, what their offerings are right now. Well, thank you again, everybody, for joining us and for recommending your local shops. I hope everybody's able to get copies of these books we're going to discuss today. If you haven't yet, you can order them now, available widely. So we're going to start with some questions that I have for the team. And then anybody who's watching in the chat, you are welcome to ask your questions of the creators about their comics at any time. Our moderators will be watching for those, and we'll work those in throughout as we go along. So please feel free to drop your questions in the chat anytime. We're keeping an eye out, and let's get down to it. So panelists, again, thank you for joining us in this virtual panel, our virtual Dark Horse Con today from home. So can each of you, let's move beyond just the basics. Can each of you give us the rundown on what your new book is about? Like a short synopsis or the elevator pitch, if you will. How about this time? Let's start with Chris. You have two books
Yeah.
roughly this week.
Elevator pitch. Elevator pitch. Okay, so I know I only have 5 seconds of your time. Well, I guess I'll talk about The Mask first. So, one of the foundational books of Dark Horse, and something that I just stumbled across when I was a kid, was the original Mask books, The Mask and The Mask Returns. And I think were republished or reprinted after the famous Jim Carrey movie. I convinced my mom to let me buy the trade, and then found it to be this wholly insane, very violent, very disturbing story that was also really funny, left a lasting impression on me, maybe psychically scarred me. But when I started working with Dark Horse and Karen Berger through Berger Books, I got to meet Mike Richardson, who created the character and now runs the company, started the company, and started talking about The Mask, and came up with a new take on The Mask, which is basically that The Mask has been missing since I think the last Mask book was in print. So it's in continuity with books all the way up through The Mask Hunt for Red October, which I think was the late 90s. But it's been in hiding. So the original main characters of the book, who are the heroes of the book, it's not The Mask, or Big Head, as he's called in the Mask universe, are Detective Kellaway, who's now retired, and then Stanley Ipkiss's original girlfriend, who also wore the mask herself, Kathy. But it's a whole take on the chaos that is happening now, where a character like Big Head fits more into the world than maybe he used to. So he's less of an underground character and more just an agent of chaos that's readily embraced by everyone in America, so much so that he decides to run for president. Yeah, this it's called I Pledge Allegiance to the Mask. It's just pure blackness, kind of the most profane, angry thing I've written in comics yet. Wrote it 2 years ago, and now as it's coming out, it almost feels quaint in terms of what's going on. It was more of a harbinger, and now it's just kind of like, oh, wouldn't that be funny as we watch everything burn and destroy itself. That said, I think it's a fun story. It's got great art by Patrick Reynolds, who I worked on it with. It's like very much in tune with Doug Mankey's original work, but Patrick brings this wonderful kind of stark noir to it. And then my other book, Everything, I'll go through that really quickly. It's about an evil store, an evil department store in 1980 Michigan called the Everything Store. And I published this one with Karen Berger, and it's a really weird, kind of spooky, again, Lynchian, Inland Empire kind of take on the evils of corporate consumerism. And has some really weird, trippy sci-fi stuff that I wrote while I was on mushrooms.
It reminds me a little bit, kind of a similar theme to, Stranger Things last season with the whole Starcourt Mall.
Yeah, the Starcourt
thing.
Mall. Yeah, very much.
Yeah, and if you don't know, the original Mask comics are real dark and real violent. So this new Mask collection is definitely a return to that style. Yeah. And you touched on a common question we get, which is it in continuity? Well, you heard it here. It definitely is.
It's in continuity.
Well, how about Carlos next? Can you tell us about Strayed?
Yeah, so this is Strayed. It's a book about an astral traveling cat, and my cat just came out of his slumber because he heard his name. But yeah, the cat in the book is named Lou, and he is an astral traveling cat, like I mentioned, and his owner, whose name is Kiara, is this genius scientist who creates a device that translates Lou's brainwaves into speech. And this is a sci-fi story. It's in the far future, and there is this military organization that figures that that's going on and starts using them to scout for new planets in the galaxy, and then they go and colonize them. And Kiara and Lou don't know that's what initially it's happening. They just know they're going on these missions, and once they find out, the book springs into this whole story of, colonialism, cats, astral traveling, galactic war, all those sort of themes. So yeah, that's straight.
With epic art.
Yes, the art is by Juan Do, and yeah, it's really beautiful. I was really lucky to get Juan to work with me on it. He was the artist that I was using as reference because I love his art, and I was working with another artist who was not delivering the work, was someone new. Oh, there's your cat, nice. And then out of frustration, I wrote Juan an email, and he immediately responded and said he loved the idea. And then we talked on the phone for about 2 hours, and then I had Juan in the book. And then we got Matt Krotzer doing the lettering, who also did, I think, a fantastic job getting the sci-fi elements in there. Chas Pangburn did initial editing, and then we had a few editors for Dark Horse as well. It's out now. Please go get it. If you like cats, if you hate cats, also get it.
If you like sci-fi, any of it.
Yeah.
So let's dive into Count Crowley. David and Lukas, can you tell us about your book?
Sure. I wrote Count Crowley inspired originally by my love of classic horror hosts. This was my favorite growing up, Cremation Mortem in Kansas City. But the idea grew, and I wanted to tell a story about a woman that's an aspiring journalist who, in 1983, from a small town in the Midwest, and she wants to be, the first woman. Walter Cronkite. She wants to really not only investigatively, but also share major news to the world. And she's very talented, very smart, but also very self-destructive. So she gets her big break in Cleveland and is assaulted by the head male co-anchor star of the news program there. And no one believes her. They basically say she's an opportunistic alcoholic, and her career is completely dismantled. She's sent back to her small town where she grew up, and her brother now manages a little TV station that her parents used to run. And the only job, because her alcoholism is so out of control, that he can employ her as is replacing the now missing Friday night creature feature host, Count Crowley. So she puts on the makeup reluctantly, downs, a fifth of whiskey, and goes on, is an instant hit because she's so acerbic and so sassy, and people really love her attitude. And she stumbles out for the first time feeling good about herself, and is accosted by a werewolf. And it turns out that the man who she replaced, who's been hosting the creature feature, that was just his cover. He's actually one of the last appointed monster hunters, and monsters have absolutely infiltrated our society over the millennia. They have been spinning fake news and information into our society. So everything you think you know about monsters is a lie. And Jerry's going to have to figure out if she can rise to this challenge, and also if she can stop destroying her own life long enough to hopefully save the lives of people she loves. And this amazing artwork, which really is the heart and soul of this entire book, if you get a chance to read it, is by my incredible friend Lukas Ketner. I'll let you say whatever you'd like to about this, Lukas, but God, every time I look at this, I get such a chill.
That's pretty much how you described it to me when, we were first paired up at Dark Horse, and like, we were trying to figure out, are we a good fit for each other? And I mean, hearing you describe that I just immediately knew that I wanted to work on the book. It was just, I could already see it in my head. And so like just the 1980s creature feature stuff, the classic monsters, everything about it was something that I was like, yes, this is what I'm doing this year. And I think I think it was only like a day later, like that night, I didn't even wait to like sign on or anything like that. I just started sketching stuff and like kind of drew that first design of the main character, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. And I started getting the scripts. I was just like really super into it. And
you guys are an amazing team with Lauren also.
Yes. Yeah.
And let's not forget about Ruby Falls. Can you tell us about Ruby Falls, please?
Sure. Ruby Falls is about a fallen woman and the whole idea of what is a fallen woman. So it takes place in 2 time periods. During Prohibition, a family that runs a speakeasy during Prohibition in an old mining town. And it takes place in the present when a young girl, Lana, is visiting her grandmother, and her grandmother is becoming a little bit senile and starts telling stories about murders that she witnessed, specifically a 50s of a fallen woman, very much like the cautionary tale of the Black Dahlia. Do you remember the Black Dahlia case? So it's kind of the idea that if you want to be a independent female and go become an actor and go to Hollywood and you're killed, you become a cautionary tale for women. So this is the book, and the artist Flavia Biondi did an amazing job, especially with, she created like a body language for each character. So there's characters that just never uncross their shoulders, and there's characters that are always very open. And I mean, the artwork is, there's the murder, and the artwork is just beautiful. It's very noir, but also she created this look so that when you leave the, there's also a strip club called Silks for those that are into that kind of thing. Anyway, that's my book.
Yeah, it looks like Gary, our awesome behind the scenes host, he's kind of flipping through the interiors of these also as we go. So you can see some of Flavia's amazing interior art too. As Annie pointed out, Flavia is Italian and based in Italy. And so her style is a little bit different from a lot of the other comics that we see here on US shelves. And I hope, you know, like people respond really well, I think, to the interiors especially. So move beyond the cover into the mystery of Ruby Falls. It's really excellent. So let's continue on, and I'm curious if you can each talk a little bit about what your process was like working with your collaborators, including your editorial team at Dark Horse. Most of you are writers, so how did you collaborate with your artists? And Lukas, when we come to you as our artist rep, maybe you can talk about your process working on the Crowley scripts. So maybe let's start with you two, since we have kind of part of the Crowley team here.
Sure. So, you know, like I said, I've been developing the idea since I was about 12, and I've been reading and collecting comic books my entire life. Hi, Kitty. I wish Bubblegum would come up here. We have a new family member.
This is Rex.
Hi, Rex.
Invades a lot.
So handsome. So when I finally really figured out what it was about after going through my own struggles with addiction and mental illness, and then also just I originally, for years, Jerry was a man, and then I had some conversations with several women really close to me, and I feel like I cracked the last thing that I needed about this. And so initially, when I was paired with Megan Walker, who was my editor at Dark Horse, I was so excited because she had so many great ideas, and I wanted this, you know, woman's perspective on helping me tell this story. But I don't know if I've ever told you this before, Lukas, I was pretty damn adamant about wanting a female artist for the book. And I just assumed Megan would absolutely be on board with that. And it's not that she wasn't. She was like, I agree with you. She's like, but I let me just go to the list of, you know, the artists that I think are the best for Count Crowley. And if it's a woman, great. If it's not, I don't want you to like let that hang you up. I was like, okay. And I had created a list of artists that I sent to her, and she came to me the day after we met, and she was like, "Are you familiar with Lukas Ketner?" And I was like, "Oh my God, like Witch Doctor Lukas, he's amazing." And she was like, "He is perfect for this comic." And I don't know him personally, but I know him through circles. I think he's the right artist for this book. She sent Lukas the script. Within a day, he sent back his response to the script and also some sketches. And I had a really emotional reaction. I couldn't, it was like, you know, 20 plus years of dreaming up this story. And then seeing her looking at me was, it's hard to still describe. I was blown over. And then Megan connected us, put us on the phone together, and Lukas, we just we mind melded. We didn't stop talking, and we haven't stopped talking and collaborating. And then of course bringing on Lauren Affey, who's just done such a magnificent job tonally with the color scheme and capturing the right essence of era that we wanted. And I think that Frank brings so much to his letters. There's a lot of minor detail in here that I catch each time I go back and read in the way he's, shaped words, letters, and especially some of the onomatopoeia stuff. So anyway, Lukas, I always like hearing your side of things.
I mean, that's pretty much how it happened. How we got together was, it was just a message out of the blue from Megan, who I hadn't worked with before. Describing it was just a few paragraphs of just like, this is what the book's about. This is the stuff you're going to get to draw if you do it. And like, that's what really hooked me on it. And then of course, like David said, the first time we had a conversation, we just, we like all the same stuff. We watched all the same horror stuff growing up. It just kind of, it really was kind of a, excuse me, just a really amazing start to a working relationship. And the best thing about it was just getting each new script, because then like, if you're an artist on a book, you get to be the first reader. You get to see where the story is going and things like that. And so from there, it was just, sketching the characters, doing the pencils. I think that first character sketch I sent over, I think the only thing we ended up changing was like the shoes, which I was really surprised by.
The shoes and the pendant. Remember the shoes?
Oh yeah, the pendant.
But I mean, it is what she looked like that first day, she looks like today. Like that's her. That's Count Crowley. And then Jerry, Jerry that's not in the makeup, just our friend Jerry Bartman, he nailed her. I mean, she's so perfect as Jerry, and I just, it's weird, man. Anyway, so good.
Yeah, I mean, it was just really great to like get each new script and get to sort of, do the thumbnailing thing, hash out where everything goes, and then after my part of it's done, then it's still such a great experience, because then I get to see it, basically finished by Lauren Affey, who just, the artwork's, it's not artwork until she gets it and puts her mark on it, and then that's when I'm like, okay, it's done. And of course, Frank's such an amazing letterer, and he really, he's the one that leads the eye around the page and stuff for everybody. It's really great.
Yeah, thank you for calling out the whole team. I mean, each person plays such a vital role, and it's usually, not always, but usually done by a different person for each part. And I would have loved to have Lauren on today as well, but as you can see, we have kind of a full house. So hopefully, maybe we'll do a colorist feature coming up. Actually, I think that would be really fun too.
Oh yeah.
How about Carlos? Can you talk about working with your collaborators a bit on Strayed?
Yeah, so working with Juan was really interesting, because he has over 15 years of experience doing comic books, and I had none. So I was a new guy. I have been working on video games, and I do music. I actually did a soundtrack for Stray that's free to download. But so I'm familiar with, just working with artists and working on visual medium. It was not hard for me when I was writing the scripts to describe the things that were in my mind. And also the other thing that we did is every time I sent Juan a script, we got on the phone and we talked about it. If there was any doubts, any concerns, or if he had any ideas that we felt could make the page stronger, we talked about it. So there was always a lot of communication. And Juan actually does coloring as well. And his process is a little bit different than other artists, because I would get the thumbnails basically, which is, small size version of everything that's going to go on the page, for those that don't know. And then immediately after, I would get pretty much close to finished pages, except for some color changes. But I trust him enough that process was good for me. And whenever there was a change, he was like, no problem. He did it right away. So yeah, that was a process with me and him. With the letterer who came after, who was Matt Krotzer, it was just when the art was finished, he went to the letterer. He got the script. If he had any questions, he hit me up. And then that was kind of most of the process. Now, getting this book published with Dark Horse was very different than what Dave and Lukas just described for me. I started working on this book about 3 years ago. And I was going to every single convention that I could, even when the book was not done, just to see how I got into comics, how could I get in, and learning about, going to Artist Alley, talking to everyone, meeting people. I had another project that I was trying to move. And by the time I talked to my editor at Dark Horse, which is Spencer Cushing, he was actually at San Diego Comic-Con, I think 3 years ago now, maybe 2. And I had already issue 1 done, and I printed it myself. I printed 50 copies of it, and I was giving it out to certain artists and people that I just felt connected to. And I went to see a panel where Spencer was speaking, and afterwards I found him on the floor. I talked to him. I showed him the book, and he was familiar with Juan's art. He liked the concept. And then a few months later, we had a contract and we were going. And by the time we started working with you guys, we already had, I think, 3, or we were working on issue 3 by that time. It's 5 issues collected on the trade. Yeah, so for me, and then the way I write the script is traditional comic book script. So panel description, and then dialogue. However, there's some pages on Stray that are really crazy. That are not traditional layouts at all, where there's like portals and cats everywhere and they're talking. So for a few of those initially, I actually drew them out and sent them a sketch of what I thought it should, roughly would look like, and he made it 100 times better. And later on the book, I was like, I just trust him so much that I was just like, okay, this is what needs to happen on this page. Just go nuts for a lot of, especially the last issue. It was almost all like almost Marvel style, where I just told him what was happening on the page and he just went for it. So yeah, that was a process for me.
Thank you. Yeah, again, Gary's kind of flipping through the interiors of these so you can see some of the unique panel arrangements and page layouts here too. Gorgeous art. Once again, very different from Crowley, but all of the books featured today are different and feature unique art by a slew of different artists.
Yeah, we had we had an ongoing joke with Juan that whenever he wrote the book, so Juan does not his real name, it's just the name he goes by as an artist. So whenever I would talk to him, people know his name is Kenny. He'll be like, he gets out of his body, and then Juan Do comes in and does the art, and it was like an improvisation going on back and forth. So like the art is really full of energy, right? When you look at it, it's just like jumping at you, color-wise too. And I think that's why I wanted him for the book. That's perfectly for an astral traveling space adventure, So I was really happy with the result as well.
Excellent. Let's maybe go back to Ruby Falls, since I know, Chris, you're going to have 2 books to talk about. So Annie, can you talk about working with Flavia and all your other collaborators for this book?
I mean, it's interesting. Well, listening to you talk about Artist Alley, I had a big wave of sadness because I love Artist Alley so much. You go to a convention and it really is the last spot. Comic stores and Artist Alley is where we all get to hang and talk to each other, and where a lot of business happens, really, is where people meet each other. So because I wrote for Marvel and DC for many years pre-internet, we used to, the artists, we used to get together and drink. If you were working on a book with someone like Daredevil, I was working on Daredevil with John Romita Jr. or whoever you're working with, you kind of hung a lot because, it was either the phone or hang out. And so now it's very different with Ruby Falls. Flavia lives in Italy and I live in New York, and I don't speak Italian and she doesn't speak English. So something else happens, which is some kind of incredible telepathic thing starts happening where you just, because you never get to talk or get drunk together, you have you're sending images and words back and forth. And I had that also with David Aha and the Seeds, where you just become like some kind of telepathy forms. And so Karen Berger kind of rescued me from the world of superheroes. I had always done superheroes, which I love, and I love writing action adventure stories, but there's a certain kind of a escalation to the narrative, no matter what, you have to fight somebody. And so with Karen Berger, when she started Berger Books, I was able to finally tell non-superhero stories with the Seeds, and now with Ruby Falls. And Karen really wanted, after she read the pitch, she really wanted a female artist. And so the other thing is, I want to give a shout out to Lee. I never say his name right. Lee Lowridge, the color.
I think Luffridge, I think.
Isn't it Lee Luffridge?
Yeah.
Yeah, Lee Luffridge, because the coloring that he did, I'm going to try and find, it's like, for the exteriors, he just did this beautiful, like, fall palette, I'd say. And then for the interiors, he went, you know, more noirish and dark. And he created this, like, color scheme, this beautiful color scheme. So that's, it was one of the stranger relationships working in comics, because you don't actually ever speak, but instead you develop your telepathic abilities. So, you know.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I was curious about that. Now we know. Well, I hope that Flavia it sounds like this book has been doing well in Italy too.
Yeah. Well, we're both Italian, you know, and I was all ready to do the start of the Ruby Falls tour. Was going to take place in Naples, Italy last month, and I was learning Italian so that I could finally have a cocktail, me, Karen Berger, and Flavia in Naples, and you know, now I'm having a virtual cocktail.
Well, hopefully after we have a vaccine, the tours can resume. So let's go back to Chris now. Can you tell us a bit about your process and how it differed between the two books, maybe, and working with the different folks on those?
Well, let's see. I mean, I had come off of a book. My first comic book I'd ever done was She Could Fly, and I had pitched that to Karen Berger. And it was just nothing short of an incredible experience. And I was introduced to Karen by Willow Wilson. I came out of, the TV and film world. And so to be in the comic world suddenly was just, I don't know, it was just wonderful, just because it was, everyone was nicer. And also the feedback loop was small, so it was very controlled and contained in terms of what you were doing. And, I had such a good experience with Karen that we started talking about maybe something we could do next. And so I pitched her this story called Everything, which is about a store that sells everything. And it's like a new department store that, back in the time when people saw department stores as like, the second coming, when they would come to your town, it's like, we're getting a Dillard's, it was that kind of thing, or like, there's a new Kmart. And so the premise of the book was that, just taken to an extreme. Small town gets this store, and it definitely is an allegory for the everything stores we have today, which is like Amazon and these places and the internet. But we wanted a brick and mortar store to tell that story, so it's set in the past. But Karen, we set about talking about what we wanted it to look like, and we wanted something that was vivid, and also very colorful, kind of approachable and friendly, just because we were going to do actual catalog pages in the book. So most issues have pages from the Everything Store catalog, just like the old, Sears catalogs. And so she brought in INJ Colbert, and he has this wonderful kind of just very friendly, kind of a cheery style. But what's great about him is that he also does really dark stuff. He's adapted Lovecraft into graphic novels, and so it has this kind of very beautiful simplicity to it, but then at the same time can be very unnerving. So he was great at building this kind of slow dread with me, and he also colors his own work, which was new for me. So he would go in, and the feedback loop was even smaller, and he would color the work himself. And so doing that work with him, which was at once building the look and feel of the catalog pages, and then the normal world of 1980 small town Michigan, and then going into like, underneath the store and interdimensional gold beings with like living cybernetics and all kinds of crazy stuff. It was an amazing spectrum to build with him, and a lot of fun. And then with the mask, I mean, that was something where, I loved the character, and it had had fallen by the wayside and is very attached to the movie. But it was so long ago that in talking to Mike, it was, what can we do that really revitalizes the character? And because the character just seems so audacious, and it has such a kind of punk underground feel to it in those original books, it was like, well, I feel like there could be an explosion of that just into the contemporary world. And where it almost feels like Big Head's whole shtick can kind of feel old hat in a way, and more accepted by the mainstream. And I feel like if there were ever a world where a murderous psychopath could be elected president of the United States, I was like, it's now. And so, yeah, I mean, like, I was in Vancouver for a few weeks finishing up a project up there, a movie, and I just wrote, this very, very dark treatment where I just went as hard and loud and violent and scary and funny as I could for Mike. And he brought in our editor, Daniel Chabon, who was great, because I think Daniel immediately got that we wanted to have a noir look, but not have it be super weighted down, and like too literally dark in the art. And so he brought on Patrick Reynolds, who does this incredible kind of portraiture. And what's great about Patrick is he poses for his own panels and takes photos of himself, which are fantastic. And he's very reticent to share those with anybody, but I've seen a few, and him doing the big head poses are fantastic, because he actually has a pretty expressive face himself. So he would do that, and then he would build this great kind of gritty noir art. And then Lee Luffridge, who also colored Ruby Falls, came in, and he would bring this like really vivid color and tone to it that, I don't know, like it brought it alive, and it made it kind of even scarier. Like, I opened the book to this like one page where I think like the first time that like Big Head does like a pirate broadcast and announce that he's running for president, like the explosions and the color and like the green of it all, like just because of the mask's face, were fantastic. And we did this cover for issue 3. There's only 4 as a miniseries, but the cover for 3, I think, was like one of my favorite covers we ever did, where it's this beautiful kind of soaring patriotic thing where Lee really brought it to life. But Patrick drew essentially like, these are how the guys were dressed in Charlottesville. Like, no shit. Like, this is exactly how they were dressed. It's very, Proud Boy. Like, we were going to do red hats, did green instead. And it's Iwo Jima, but this is actually the ruins of the Lincoln Memorial. Like, we weren't subtle with this book in any way in terms of what we were saying, but the way that it kind of came together with Patrick's art, where it feels very kind of that kind of American Greco-Roman edifice, and then colored by Lee in this beautiful way. I don't know. It came together really, really nicely. I feel like it honors, Mankey's original art, but then also brings a new level to it. And then, having Nate come in and do the Big Head bubbles, which are very specific and unique. I have a nostalgia for that special bubble and speech pattern that Big Head has. He came in and nailed that, and was able to fit all of my gobbledygook into those bubbles. It's been great. Yeah.
It's definitely a testament to all of you on the team that you got to work on the mask, actually, because it is precious to the original creators. And so it was, I think, tough to get a new version of the mask going and to kind of let that go, but they found the right people to work on it and tell a great story that everybody was excited about. So
I remember when Mike finally called me and said, okay, we're going to do it. And I remember him saying, he's like, you remember the old proverb of may you live in interesting times? He's like, well, the version of that at Dark Horses, may Mike Richardson become personally interested in your book? And so I was like, okay. But he was nothing but supportive, and he really gave me a lot of freedoms in there, which was amazing.
That's excellent. Well, and if a few of you have touched on this already, but so most of you, possibly all of you, have worked in other areas besides comics, film, TV, games, etc. How is the experience of working on comics different for you? And were you able to kind of bring, like, what were you able to bring from your experience in TV, film, etc., to working in comics? And I mean, this is open to anyone and everyone. If anybody would like to start, please feel free.
Well, I mean, I feel like I spent maybe 15 years as a journalist and a documentary filmmaker, and then 10 years in the film business. So I think if we're talking this question, maybe for young writers out there, the craft of storytelling goes from every medium, and sometimes you are writing something and you go, that's a comic versus that's a film versus that's a piece of journalism. But I think that my years doing documentary film impacted me the most in terms of just learning how to look at life and take life and be as kind of process in a realistic way. So I would say that for me, to step out of the full-on creation bubble of just, I have to create this all by myself, you know, with the artist you're working with, is to try your hand at just either documentary journalism. I mean, I've also done theater, and then develop like all these different tools for telling stories. If that makes any sense.
For me, I've been writing a couple of screenplays that have been made into films, and I write those very heavy dialogue with very little parenthetical. And then I love, as a writer, creating a roadmap, which then gets handed off to a director, and their vision becomes the film. And there's this balance, there's this transfer of and it ends up being quite a different thing when it's made into a film. And I've been really pleased with that experience always, because I don't know if I've ever looked at the storytelling process that way. And so when this process began, I had a lot of learning to do, and Megan was very helpful with me, but I did have to get to communicate the idea. I had to step, I believe, outside of my comfort zone as a writer, which is generally through writing dialogue and character development and plot. Obviously, I love plot and I love story structure, but I had to really get into the nitty gritty of physical detail. And Chris, I was gonna say, there's Patrick who did he does like pictures of himself when he's, I do that vocally. I write all my characters from how I would love to perform them and how I would love their speech to go. So if you listen to me write, my wife will say I sound like a schizophrenic up here because I'm always sounding out my dialogue. But it was very hard for me at first, because I knew there was things I wanted to find that great balance in handing over a script to Lukas that was like, okay, in this shot, I feel like, is it weird for me to say, would it be possible to include this, and this? And then he'd write back like, no, that's great. Please give me that detail. And then other times I would just have the dialogue and like, they're in this room. I just need to see that she's scared, even though she's saying something that sounds really badass. And he would go, I got it. And then he would come back with exactly what I was dreaming of, because I didn't know how to verbalize that properly in my descriptives, where there's a lot of that in the book where she's saying one thing, but she's telegraphing another to, I hope, the reader, if not the people in the room with her. So that's been my experience.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree in a lot of ways in that, just coming out of TV and film, is that for me, the comic artists I've worked with are probably some of the greatest directors I've worked with, just because there's such a intuitive sense of taking what you've written, taking the story and conveying not only the tone, but also the course of action, the economy of the image, what they need to kind of space out in order for you to, one, understand it, and two, feel it, right? I think that it's unparalleled in terms of the artists I've worked with, and Patrick and INJ are no different in that way, and that's been very different, I think. And also that economy of image is super important too, just in the transition from TV and film, where you know, I've directed in film and in TV, and obviously, you know, in writing TV as well. There's a motion to it, that the whole thing is kind of sum and total supposed to give you a feeling. Comics do the same thing, but what I think is interesting is that you know, I think it's short shrift in comics tremendously to say something like storyboards. I don't think that's what it is. I think it's doing exactly what a camera move does, or an entire sequence does, or a montage does, in singular images. And I think that is such a different experience for someone to watch the kind of, you know, river stream of motion in a film or in TV, and in comics, to tell a story in a series of tableaus that you can hang on as long as you want to, as the reader. I mean, that to me, that the rereadability of comics for me is all about that, where you can go back and spend time in that singular moment, which is frozen there, and the way that the artist is able to put all of the story into that still image, and have it convey as much emotion and meaning as a, you know, full sweeping sequence, or a very dialogue heavy back and forth. You know, that to me is the power of the medium, and that's why it's been incredible. And you know, you work with one person who is able to do that, which is crazy. It's like the artist is like, I'm still the writer, but the artist is not only the director, but the entire crew that would be around you on a set, you know. And obviously you have the colorist who comes in and your letterer, but it's incredible that the medium's able to convey the same kind of meaning to me.
Just to piggyback on what Chris is saying, for video games, it's similar, where you have, you know, you might have hundreds of people working on a video game to make it happen, and it becomes a little bit of each of those people. And for me, comic books, it's a very personal way of telling stories, where, you know, you're writing it and you're collaborating with the artist, maybe a few more people, and that's it. So it feels, I feel like it's a more pure form of art in that way, of visual art, because it doesn't have to go through all these other filters to become a thing. Sometimes that can be bad, but hopefully that ends up with something really good. And I would say for video games, for me, just working with a lot of artists was something that it really helped me. You know, when it came to working on comics, and also doing the press, was also easier for me, just because I had the experience of promoting video games, you know, and going to conferences and talking to press. So that part was almost like riding a bicycle for me, when it came to promote the book and get it out there and get on podcasts and stuff like that. And from the music side, from independent music, I think I just got just the energy and the idea of, you do it yourself, right? Like, if you want to make a record, you get a 4-track, you record it, you do it. If you want to write a comic book, there's a lot of books out there that teach you how to write comic books. There's amazing Will Eisner books. There's Scott McCloud. There's a Bendis book. There's a Marvel and DC book. And all those give you a little bit of knowledge that you need to write it. And then you just have to find an artist and work with them. And there's hundreds and hundreds of independent comic books that come out every year that are amazing. And yeah, so that spirit from the underground music world is something that I brought into comic books, and it made me, I think, a better collaborator, to say the least. And then music, like I mentioned, has always been very important to me. So another thing that I try to do when I wrote, I would tell Juan, the artist, what music I was listening to, so that he could just get a similar vibe to what I was getting when I was writing. And I think that also helped. But yeah, for me, Straight is my first comic book. It was the first time that I complete a graphic novel. And it just took a lot of guts to get through it and just do it. think that's it for me.
I'll throw in a quick note actually about the music. So we have, Carlos, you made music that goes with Strayed, and we also have a Count Crowley Spooky Tunes playlist. We are kind of collecting music playlists from various creators that go along with their books or that they listen to while working on their books. So we need to ask, Lukas, Annie, and Chris, if you want to contribute to this as well. But anybody who wants to check those out, Dark Horse has started a Spotify as another, this is something that we know we can kind of offer everybody at home right now while we're all still self-quarantining and the like. So check it all out on the Dark Horse Comics Spotify. The Strayed mood music, the Count Crowley mood music, and much more. Maybe more to come. So Lukas, how do you feel as the artist on this crew today about what we were just discussing? Getting to be the director.
I that's what I've always loved about it. I mean, I was a freelance illustrator for like 7 or 8 years before I got into comics, and it's just I think a big contributor of me getting into comics, of course, is loving comics, but then it's also like I live in Portland, and if you're meeting other illustrators and other artists around town, they all work in comics. Like it's chances are you're going to start getting a friend group that, and I'm over at Helioscope PDX in Portland here, which is just like a really big, 30 people all sharing a room under normal circumstances and just like making comics and stuff like that. But yeah, it's so coming from illustration, what drew me to comics so much was just the storytelling. And that's like, I think that I'm hearing a lot of that's the thing that draws people to any medium, I think, whether it's filmmaking or comics or writing prose, video games. And that actually, like, I was like really naive because when I was an illustrator, like I would see comics and just assume that I can do it. It's just like, oh, you just do more illustrations and you put them together, and then you have a comic book. And then over the years of doing comic books, I'm like, I feel like I'm finally starting to get the hang just a little bit of the string pictures together. But what you guys were saying earlier about like being about kind of doing like a director role, I mean, that's kind of another thing I love about it, is that you can put the craziest stuff that's completely indescribable or that you would never get a budget for in a movie, and you just, all you need is just like, ink, paper, and time, and you can tell that story. So
You're much more than just getting the hang of it, Lukas. You're the Bernie Wrightson of our generation. So
always our biggest critics, though. Thanks.
Yeah, you like all the details you added to Count Crowley, the little extras, like the horror ads you might have seen in an old magazine. Those got a lot of call outs from fans.
Good, I'm glad.
I appreciate
doing that
as well. Well, we've started getting some good questions from chat too, so I'm going to kind of throw some of those into the mix here. One question for Ann. Are comics now in 2020 how you thought they might be when you first started in comics? How do you feel they're different?
Well, I mean, it's we used to all work together in a bullpen, and the artists used to come in and out all the time. So, this will date me a bit, but you would see Steve Ditko in the office, and Frank Miller, and Bernie Wrightson used to have a yearly Halloween party. Barry Windsor, so everybody, Bill Sienkiewicz, and it was very much more like a garage band, I want to say. We thought we were just like telling stories, and it was more like that yellow, roll it up, put it in your back pocket, read it and toss it kind of feeling to comics. The idea that they would be collected into fancy editions, let alone be made into movies, I mean, of course we knew that was a possibility, but for the most part, it felt like we were like jamming in somebody's basement, garage band style.
Do you have any particular feelings? Like, do you like where comics are now, I guess?
Well, I think that one of the things that I love is that when I came back into the industry after being in film for a long time, and the first Comic-Con I went to, I think it was Seattle, 2014, because I was writing Green Arrow and he lived in Emerald City, you know, so, and it was half women. And I was completely amazed because Comic-Cons back in the day, there weren't that many girls, and comic shops weren't that friendly. They didn't feel as friendly. They felt more like corn shops or something. Yeah. And so for me, these days, the fact that there's so many women in comics I did not expect that. And it's great, obviously.
I appreciate it very much as well. We are still probably a little too rare, but that's changing and something that we are actively working to continue to change. So we do. This is great. Actually, thank you everybody in chat for giving us your questions. We're starting to get some for kind of everybody. So one for Chris. Who's your very favorite character you've written, including all of the Halt characters? Halt and Catch Fire, of course. And all of your comic book characters, you know, because we can't make it easy for you. All your characters.
Boy, yeah. I would say probably of everybody I've gotten to write, I think it's a tie probably between the main character of She Could Fly, which is Luna Brewster, who's, 14, 15 years old. And I put a lot of my own kind of adolescent experiences into her and mental health issues into her. And that character is very near and dear to my heart. I would say probably tied with that is Gordon Clark from Halt and Catch Fire, who's the kind of engineer with the glasses and played amazingly by Scoot McNairy. My wife believes that that's an alter ego for me in some ways, which is always funny when people respond and think he's a complete asshole, which he kind of is, but also he's kind of a wonderful heart and off in his own world. And he's got this great angry dad energy that I feel like I channel now as a dad. So I love him very much. And that's so wrapped up in, I think he's wrapped up in Scoot's performance. And Luna is really wrapped up in Martin Marazzo's art for She Could Fly. But I do love those characters.
And we have a question for Carlos also. May not be able to go into too much detail on this one yet, but will there be any more stories planned within the universe of Strayed? And whether it's that or not, what other projects do you have coming up next?
There's definitely some writing and perhaps some art that has happened for future stuff. Nothing to be announced yet, but I'm working with Juan on something. Hopefully, eventually you'll hear about it. And then I have another book also that I cannot talk about with Dark Horse that will also come out.
Right, that's the challenge.
And then I have, I'm writing Space Riders, Vortex of Darkness for Black Mask with artist Alexis Sirith, and where issue 2 is about to come out whenever it gets to stores. So it's been delayed. So that, look out for that as well. Alexis' art is very psychedelic, very curvy inspired. And it is a space adventure where the crew is curses a lot in Spanish, and that and they're fighting like space monsters and all sort of weird space ghouls and ghosts and things like that. So it's a really cool book. It comes from the mind to Alexis, and he invited me to write that. And then as far as Strayed goes and other projects with Dark Horse, as soon as there's something we can talk about, if it exists, I don't know if it exists, then we'll talk about it.
That applies to many things right now. We do get a lot of questions about, is this coming up? Will there be more? Here's what I'll say. to that. Dark Horse tends to do things in miniseries, and then those are collected in these books that are out this week. Those collect, 4, 5, 6, depending issues. And then there is often another miniseries that comes out. So stay tuned for announcements. Everything though, it has been paused due to COVID closures. And I mean, that includes printers, among other businesses. So just be aware, nothing is canceled, but things have just been postponed. And so single issues will be resolicited soon once their actual new release dates get closer, and new projects will start being announced as we're able to, really start work and finish work and get those out. So updates to come on many new things. We had a new panelist join us for a second. Is she going to come back? Did she want to answer some questions?
It was Nat. Yeah, she's doing art. My kids are artists. My son actually makes his own comic book called Plant Man versus Gax, and he does all of his paneling and his artwork, and he has this fantastic villain that he created who it blew me away when he invented her, because he has a lot of wonderful characters. Drillius shoots drills out of his hands, etc. But then along came Mrs. Sadness, and I'm trying to find the frame, but I was like, what is this? And I love Mrs. Sadness so much, and she ended up like causing large crowds of people to get overwhelmed with sadness and be so depressed that they were lethargic and the city was falling apart. And then Plant Man stole all the got the people cake with Potato Man. And anyway, so quick side story, because that was my daughter Penny, and she and my son Arlo make comics and stuff together. But I printed up some of these for one of Arlo's. You do this thing at the end of a kid's birthday party where you're supposed to give stuff to people to leave with, and I was like, Arlo, how about we print your comic and give it to kids? And he was like, oh, that's a great idea. So we did it, and I had some leftover, and I go every week. Usually Arlo comes with me pretty often to this comic shop in Sherman Oaks called Earth 2, and I had I had some with me, and the manager in there put them on the shelf, and he went in, and his mind was he had the same feeling I had when I went home to Kansas City to my shop that I grew up in when issue 1 came out of Crowley, and I got to see it on the shelf. That's totally unrelated to what we're talking about. Sidebar. Sorry, but there you go.
Next time I go into a comic shop, I'm going to order that comic. What's it called again?
Plant Man versus Gax. That's
all
right.
Awesome. It's going to be on my pull list.
Hey, there was Axe Cop years ago, also done by a young, officially comics artist now. So you never know. Also, that fits in really well. Did he watch our Plants vs. Zombies stream with Ron Chan?
He didn't get to watch the stream, but he loves Plants vs. Zombies. And so when I got to become a part of the Dark Horse family, I was so excited because I was like getting to show him cool stuff. And I have posters, and his room is filled with Plants vs. Zombies stuff. So yeah. We put the recording up on YouTube, as we'll do with this stream too. I'll watch it with him. Yeah, it's really fun. We chat with Paul Tobin, the writer, but also with Ron and Kat Ferris, who both have done art for the Plants vs. Zombies series. And so Ron shows kind of how to draw a lot of the PVZ characters, and Kat does this amazing job coloring. And we got some fan art from kids who watched along at home and drew while we were streaming, which is kind of why we did it. We wanted to give something to the kids who were, quarantining too. So it was really sweet to see. They get a lot of great fan mail from kids too. So awesome. It's nice to see that the kids love those comics so much, because man, they really do. Yeah. Oh, well, so we're going to try and wrap up by 1:30 today. We have another couple questions for the whole crew that I think we should have some time for before we wrap up, and we'll draw a giveaway winner once again near the end of this. So a little bit before 1:30, look for that. Still open for entries in the chat if you are watching along with us. So it's hashtag or # new comics, all one word. And let's see. So next up we have, this is kind of a fun one, maybe challenging, I don't know. But for each of you, the main characters in your books, if they were quarantining like we are right now,
how do you think they would be passing the time?
Oh my God.
It depends where you catch Jerry. If you catch her at the beginning of our story, she would be blacking out drunk. And then luckily where she leaves off at the end of volume 1, she's just gone to her first AA meeting. So she's not only studying the big book, she's also studying the texts of The Appointed. So she's learning about Bilatombia and all these other monsters that she's going to learn to fight. So that's what I think she would be doing.
Research.
I feel like all the salespeople at the everything store, since they're partly animatronic, would just be like quietly sitting there,
Creepy.
to go back to work, like just kind of smiling lightly, just waiting. And then Big Head, I have no idea. What do you like? Is he like immune? I have no idea what happened there. I feel like you couldn't quarantine him or her, whoever's wearing that mask.
Fair point.
Well, I feel like in Ruby Falls, since it's based on 3 generations of families, they probably already are quarantined since they're all the same bloodline. And for the seeds, because they're aliens here to harvest Earth's seeds as we do our final spin around the sun, I guess, I don't know what they would be doing on quarantine.
Lou is a cat, so he's always quarantined his entire life. Because here in LA, especially where I live, there's coyotes outside and hogs and other dangerous things. And so my cat is an indoor cat, and I imagine Lou would be as well. Because he's in a space station, so he can't really go outside unless you get a little astronaut cat suit, which I've never seen, but maybe it's something that I should think about for another book. But yeah, he would be inside, so licking his paw like my cat is doing, eating and sleeping all day. I was saying this before, but I am actually quarantining with 2 cats. And I feel like they now just believe that I am a giant cat. They start licking me like they're cleaning me like I'm another cat. And their tongue is so weird. It's like very rusty, like a rusty metal. It's going on your skin. So it is very effective, but it feels really weird. So I don't let them do it. And also I am becoming more lazy and sleeping more, and trying to eat and complain several times a day when I don't have food. So to myself. So yeah, that would be Lou. And then Kiara, she's a scientist, so she would be in some isolated space station trying to find a cure, probably.
So quarantine is turning you into a cat.
And yes. Mm-hmm. Or it has already, I don't know. You tell me.
Chris, we have a shout out for you from the chat. Thank you for raising so much money for the Bing Foundation with your online auction.
Oh yeah, no, I was happy to do that. I hope there's so many other people that are doing great stuff too. Everyone's been auctioning off their original art, and artists have been drawing original things that they've been putting out there. And it's been really good to help those stores. I saw that when all this started and they started to shut down, they would get requests maybe like 2 or 3 a week, and they started getting something like 60 a day, just because everybody had to shutter their doors. So everything we can raise for them is good.
Yeah, actually, this is a great point too. If any of the rest of you would like to shout out any current fundraising efforts that you have going on or others that you have seen, please feel free to mention those, and we can try to drop some links in chat too.
This week in particular is there's a special push, obviously in as the coronavirus continues to ravage the world, and as we see our society come to some much long gestating awakening, and which is also unrest and difficult times, there are still sick kids in a hospital that need care. And one of the most special places in the United States is a place called Children's Mercy Hospital in my hometown, Kansas City. They gave cancer treatment to my nephew when we didn't have money or insurance, and he's now in his late 20s. And they this week is the week we were supposed to be doing a big fundraiser there, which we do every year. And so instead it's called the Big Slick at Home. So if you get a chance and you're looking for ways, there are some really wonderful ways to support them. And, you know, it's not with a lot of money. Just buying a t-shirt would be great.
Excellent.
I have one, I guess it's more of a comic specific thing, but I just joined the board of directors for the Heroes Initiative, which is a long time, like when we do conventions and we sign comic books, we put a bucket in for people to donate to the Heroes Initiative. And as comic book artists hit hard times, as they often do, we fund hospital and other things for comic book artists that are, and writers who are having some hard times. So it's called the Heroes Initiative.
That's a great call out. Yeah, and thank you to our moderators. They are dropping those links in the chat too for people to check out.
Yeah, I've got a thing on my own Twitter where I'm giving away Count Crowley books and some commissions for donations to any Black Lives Matter organization. You don't necessarily have to choose that. If anyone wants to make a donation, you know, and wants a drawing from me, I'll do it. You know, so just contact me on Twitter, contact me through my website. It's just kind of open invitation.
That's another great call out. Maybe starting with Lukas, we can go around, and can you just tell people where they can find you on social media, and which channels you're on?
Sure, I'm on just my name, one word, Lukas Ketner on Twitter. Lukas.Ketner on Instagram. Website's lukasketner.com. It's all just my name. Lukas with a K. But yeah, please find me, talk to me, and hit me up for any reason.
I'm checking to make sure I'm correct, but it's at Dastmalchian. So my last name, Dastmalchian, at Dastmalchian on Instagram and on Twitter. And then there is a Count Crowley Instagram, and you can follow us there. It's just Count Crowley.
For me, yeah, Twitter is the best place to find me. I am at Carlos Giffoni. That's Carlos, Giffoni. And then I have an Instagram that's No Fun Dreams, but I'm more active on Twitter. And then my website is carlosgiffoni.com as well, which links to all my social media.
I'm Ann Nocenti, so a lot of people know me as Ann, but my, insanely creative pseudonym. But Ann Nocenti on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
I'm on Twitter. I'm at If You Can't Well, because that's how I can tell people how to spell my name, because for some reason it's very confusing. It's a contraction and an adverb. So if you can't, well, that's me.
It's clever and I love it. And I feel you, because I have an apostrophe in my last name. So it's also impossible, apparently. I don't know. So we drew a winner in our giveaway. You win a copy of each book we have discussed today. So you get a copy of the paperbacks of Strayed, Everything, The Mask, I Pledge Allegiance to the Mask, Count Crowley, and Ruby Falls. You get a whole library.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I want
Nice.
I know, it's good. It's La Muerte Consul is the username.
Yes, La Muerte Consul.
Yeah.
Good old
So,
soul.
congratulations. Just send us a whisper, which is like a DM private message here on Twitch. If we don't hear from you by the end of the day, we'll message you. So look out for that, and we'll exchange email, shipping info, all that good stuff. And we're coming up on 1:30. So I'm going to kind of bring us to a close. All these books that we talked about today are available at comic shops and bookstores. We shouted out a whole bunch earlier. You can find shops near you at comicshoplocator.com or indiebound.org. Thank you for shopping local and supporting your local shops. And thank you again to all of our awesome guests here today for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'll see everybody online next week on Wednesday.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all.
Bye. Likewise.
I
Thanks.
can't
very
wait
much.
till we can
Thank
all
you.
hang out in person and go get nachos
know.
together.
Yes, that sounds good. We got to do that.
First
Yes.
round.
Oh, I miss people.